Hi, so the first question we've got for you is, can you give us a brief description of Black Wings for someone who may not have read the books before?
So Black Wings is the story of four friends, Jacques, Flora, Pierre and Edmond, and they're all from different social classes, they're from different backgrounds, they have different opinions about things, but they have been friends since childhood. And little do they know that change is about to hit very strongly in France. It starts off, there's a prologue in the late 19th century, and then we move to the 18th century, to the time of the Revolution, and to just before the Revolution, when things are starting to happen. And all of them have got different opinions. And Pierre is a farmer, he's quite poor, he works very hard. Edmond is an aristocrat, he's also a painter, an artist, and he flirts with revolutionary ideas. His cousin Flora she's very keen on flowers. And then Jacques, who tells the story, who's the narrator, he's a lawyer, young lawyer. Well, he's in training to be a lawyer, his father's a lawyer, and he's carrying on a family business. So it's basically the story of the events in their lives, but it's also the story of Jacques and his own story, and how he sees the revolution and how it affects his friends, because it's not just, in times like that, it's very difficult for people. Their personal stories get overtaken by history and by major historical events that they don't have control over. So really that's what it's about. But there's a real twist at the end as well that, hopefully you don't see coming. So it's very much a dramatic story. It's a story of how the revolution unfolded, how it started with high ideals and reform and turned into this bloodthirsty thing which destroyed a lot of people and caused civil war in France, etc. So, but then at the end you come back to the 19th century and to a revelation. So it's both I hope, a gripping read. For a lot of people it'll be a very different way of looking at the revolution, because it does unfold through several years. And it's also a look at how friendship can be tested in times of trouble like that.
Very good. Okay. Next question. So Black Wings is a historical novel, and you've made a name for yourself before within this genre, 1914 for example. What draws you to write within historical fiction?
Well, the stories are great, and you also have the framework for the story. It's already all there. Your plot, in a sense, or the background at least, is there, because the events happened, you know what happened, but you can fit your fictional characters within it. You can do a lot of things, and even though things like the French Revolution are very much written about, there's still gaps, and that's where I love to go, into the gaps in history and weave a story around that. It's both really useful to write historical fiction because you have that plot framework, but you have a lot of freedom within it, as long as you keep to a reasonably authentic voice. You don't want to make it so that it's really,
it's funny, isn't it?
Sort of cod history. You want to make it so that it's actually feels authentic but speaks to modern people too. I love doing it, and as you say, yes, I have written quite a few, and I have found ways into stories that are have been told over and over again, but finding a new angle. So, yeah.
Very well, thank you very much. So the next question is, what inspired you to write about Jacques and his three friends? Why show the French Revolution through the life of four young adults navigating life?
Well, that's because, when you're young, especially at that age, when you've come out of childhood, you're in adolescence, you're about to hit young adulthood, and of course in those days people grew up very quickly. It's actually a major change in life, and to set it against a major change in history also works really well. And the fact is that, when people are living through big historical events, they don't know what's going to happen. We have the benefit of hindsight, we know what happened, but they don't, and they sort of have to live it day by day. And so it was a really interesting way to handle it, and a very human way. History can be too abstract otherwise. You need to put it through personal lives in order for it to speak to readers, I think. Yeah.
Very good, thank you. The next question is, what was your favourite part about writing Black Wings?
Well, I guess my favourite part really is the fact that, look, I've lived with this kind of story for a very long time. Since I was a child, my father told us lots and lots of stories about that area. of history, because his family originally comes from Western France, from Vendée, where a lot of the story takes place. And I heard so much about it. And as a teenager, I wrote a short story which is set during the Vendée Wars, but it's just a short story. And this one was like a culmination of so many things, and I've dedicated it to my father because of the fact that a lot of it has come from being inspired by his stories. But just to bring that whole thing to life and to have the reaction, obviously, of people who have read it already, who say, wow, you know, I did not know things went like that, and this is very involving and all that sort of thing. So it really feels like a story that I first heard about, if you like. The original inspiration comes from way back in my childhood, but to actually see it now in this beautiful book that the Greystones Press has produced is just fantastic.
It is a really beautiful book.
Yes.
And the final question is, so you've mentioned before in a past interview, if we don't get the pass, we hopefully will not make the same mistakes.
Yes.
So my question is, what is one of the main points you hope readers take away from this book?
Well, I hope that the main point they take away is that events that we see as historical, that we see as having been completed, actually have continuing repercussions into the future.